So this custom was actually created in 2002. So this is a fairly old custom, but one of my better ones if you ask me. I'd never really working with the She-Hulk mold. It was brand new at the time, and honestly it had modern articulation. Something we really don't see too much from female figures. So I definitely want to take the opportunity to kind of upgrade Scream. I think Scream should be large. I think she should be quite imposing. She is a symbiote after all, so She-Hulk, I felt like that is a decent size for that character. It fits well into the Marvel Legends scaling if you ask me, you know, in proportions with Venom from the Omega Red mold and Riot that's sitting on the Monster Venom mold, which in my opinion I feel like he deserved his own mold, but I digress. So I wanted to make this look as detailed as physically possible. But before we can start there, we have to start at the very beginning, and that is prep work. Boiling and pop the figure to disassemble, and then sanding and dremeling all the parts so that there is clearance for the articulation to function, aka making these figures paint rub free. The misconception with customs is that you can take a figure and start painting it straight away. That is incorrect. You have to put in the work. Sanding is everything when it comes to custom action figures. It must be done. It's a necessity. So after many hours of dremeling all this down, now tons of this here. Dremel those joints down. Buff them. Make them pretty, you know, nice and smooth. See how smooth that is? So I can't quite remember why I actually changed the lower legs into the Sunfire mold using the X-Men Deadpool figure from Marvel Legends. I think it's because I really don't like how the lower ankles look when they're prepped, so I wanted it to be color matched so I didn't have to have any sort of prep work done to the ankles. Also, I liked how they tapered into the slippers. It made the most sense. You know, one thing that I find incredibly strange is working with the female mold and cutting off the front part, aka the boobs, and applying them onto another female figure. The She-Hulk doesn't actually have boobs. When it comes to the sculpt detail, there isn't that much sculpt applied. It's mostly a burning tool going in there and just melting everything and kind of like almost sculpting it with the burner tool iron and, you know, adding the different textures in and then going back later and applying the sculpt detail, whether it be milliput or green stuff or brown stuff or, you know, black stuff, all these different types of putties to achieve all these different results that allowed all these details to come through. With the Scream symbiote, I think the main aspect of her character is her hair. She has this huge, flowing, beautiful hair that is symbiotic in nature that she utilizes as a weapon. So, when it comes to doing that, I wanted to have it incredibly long. I wanted it down to her ankles. But to be able to achieve that result, I had to take two Marvel Legends Screams and splice them into each other. Then sculpt around all the issues and have it so it looked organic. To bulk out a lot of the hair, I didn't want to just sculpt it. I wanted to add various different Marvel Legends hair sculpts, and that way I was using Omega Red, I was using Lady Deadpool, and other various female figures and male figures with that longer hair, and then kind of dremeling it down and then, you know, kind of putting it in and then sculpting it so it looked all nice and pretty, very smoothed out, very natural, very organic, right? And then as for the wrists and the hands, again, similar to the ankles, right? Like I didn't want to have prep work everywhere. You know, sometimes having those massive gaps can look really kind of gross, you know, and this was a new mold that I was experimenting with, so I wasn't quite sure how much needed to be dremeled. I didn't want to go too crazy, but I also didn't want to have to re-prep it due to not prepping it enough. So I decided to take a better route and use the yellow articulation points. For me, wrists and ankles, I really don't like prepping them. I think they look incredibly ugly. I also feel the same about hand pegs. I think if you prep hands, they also look really gross when it comes to Marvel Legends. So I wanted it to be color matched. So there was a lot of splicing, right? Like I had to cut all these joints in and make everything fit and mix match perfectly, and then obviously Dremel and sand and smooth and sculpt and make it all, again, very organic. When it comes to the hand sculpt, you'll notice that there is several different hands, and that's because I didn't want straight Revoltech Carnage hands. I actually wanted variation and difference in the finger length and the sculpt detail. So it's a Marvel Legends yellow peg. I think it was from the original Scream. I could be wrong. Maybe the Deadpool, I'm not sure. Made the peg fit, then spliced it, added the Revoltech hand, and then cut a few fingers off, added the Marvel Legends fingers over the top, and it kind of gives it almost like this pointing or kind of like relaxed-ish open hand. So that's kind of what I was going for. I wanted it to be a little bit more feminine, I suppose, rather than these massive, you know, scythe hands per se. So yeah, that's where that came from. I use the word organic a lot, and that's essentially because when I use the sculpt, I kind of just flow. I just go with it. I just do all these random patterns, and it's very, and I come back to this word so often, chaotic. There's no thought process. It's just like, oh, I'd like a bit of strand of flesh there, and kind of tear the sculpt a little bit, and that allows that to look a certain way. And then I had a bit of goop overlapping it, and you know, you get this really nice looking symbiote organic mess. And you know, symbiotes are very easy to lean into that, and you can get very comfortable doing that. So unfortunately, I don't have proper footage of this particular custom, which I really regret, because I would have loved to have shown you proper in-depth paint applications and detailing, but you win some, you lose some. I ended up selling this custom to a good friend of mine, so here are some images. I hope that makes up for the lack of footage, but this was a great custom. I loved working on it, and I hope to work on some more female figures soon. I actually have a lot of customs planned for female molds. So one I'd really like to do is Jean Grey. I'd like to do a Marvel vs. Capcom 2 Rogue. I would like to do a Marvel vs. Capcom 2 Marrow. There's a few, honestly, so expect them coming soon to the channel on Storm collectible bases. And on that note, I'd really like to thank the Patreon members. You guys have been absolutely phenomenal. Thank you so much for supporting my work. I really, really appreciate it. There is a link in the description below for anyone who would like to join. And on that note, I'll catch you on the next one, guys. Thanks for watching. Bye.